Hey everyone, my name is Melvin and I am a second year doctoral student studying College Student Affairs Administration here at the University of Georgia. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, my subscribers, you're probably thinking like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Melvin's talking about academic stuff. I usually don't talk about my being a grad student on my vlog, but that's going to be changing soon as I begin to share more parts of who I am. So today I wanted to talk about who I am as an educator, how that's shaped by my identities as Black, queer, gay, transgender, and talk about how that process of understanding who I am as an educator has been informed by my experiences so far in my doctoral program. But before I get into that, I want to provide a little bit of context. So when I was an undergraduate student, I was a music education major, but I didn't see myself reflected anywhere among the faculty or in the curriculum. So at the time, I was a Black lesbian woman, and most of the faculty in my department were white, mostly men, and the curriculum was very Eurocentric. And for those reasons, even though I've had educators in my family, going back at least 2 generations, I struggled to see myself in the profession because the things that I was being taught to do and to value as a future music educator didn't mesh at all with who I was and what I cared about. And so that was the source of many struggles I had within that particular program, and is one of the reasons why I never went on to become a music teacher. So that's the context. So since coming to UGA and taking classes in the doctoral program here, I've begun to rethink what it means to be an educator. Several of the faculty here regularly engage students in bringing all of who they are, all of their identities into the classroom, and using that as a springboard to discuss core topics, student affairs practice. And so I've been thinking a lot about my classroom experiences here, the teaching methods that my professors use, how they show up as professors, and so thinking about all of that has sort of led me to reflecting on previous experiences I've had and developing new insights about teaching. So several years ago, I was a librarian at a community college where I served as a facilitator for the college's Safe Zone Ally program. This program trained staff, students, and faculty to be allies to LGBT students at the college. One day, I led a training on gender identity and trans students. I wasn't out as transgender at the time. This was only 7 months into my being at this institution. And I remember after facilitating the training, reading the feedback in the evaluation forms, and one of the comments stuck out, said, this training would have been a lot better if it was done by a transgender person. So at first I thought it was kind of amusing since, I am a transgender person. But then, I thought more about it and I decided to do something different. So the next day I did the exact same training at the exact same college, but with a different set of folks. And this time I came out. I disclosed my trans identity. After that, the discussions were a lot deeper. People were more engaged than they were the previous day. And the evaluation forms indicated that more people got more out of being there. And I was also able to share the story of what happened the previous day as a teaching moment to talk about why we can't assume gender identity based on how people look. And so I tell this story because I think it illustrates why I think it's super important for folks, whether they're educators or students, to bring all of who they are into a learning environment. My being trans is directly related to my valuing creating safe and affirming environments for trans students. It was the reason why I was doing that training in the first place. And so to somehow siphon that part of me off affected my ability to teach effectively in that particular context. And so this is not a larger commentary necessarily on all trans educators needing to disclose their identities in a teaching context. I think there are many valid reasons why many people don't. So I just want to be clear on that. But I think that for me, I was unable to close that part of me off and accomplish what I wanted to accomplish as an educator. That insight did not come right away. I didn't get that insight until after coming to UGA and taking classes in the College Student Affairs Administration program, where I had professors who make those connections between who we are and the work that we do more explicit. I teach 2 service learning courses as part of my assistantship. My goal there is to transform students' relationship to service through engaging them in the socioeconomic issues underlying the service. And as part of that process, thinking critically about who they are and how that impacts their relationship to service. And so as we go through the course, we talk about topics like active citizenship, what that means, power, oppression, service learning versus volunteerism, community engagement. And so, as we go through these topics in the course, I'm prompting students along the way to draw those connections between their values and their identities and what we're learning, and applying, what I'm learning about being an educator from my professors. And, hoping that I am in that way making the content more meaningful, more impactful, and more relevant to them. So it's also important for me to be visible as a Black, queer, gay, trans educator. And I realize that there is tremendous privilege in being able to be out. I feel relatively safe in being out, and I don't fear any negative repercussions. And so for me, that privilege comes with great responsibility to the students I teach in the classroom, particularly Black, queer, and trans students. Of all of my going on 10 years of being a college student, in all that time, I've only had 6 Black professors, and only one of those professors being openly queer. I've had no professors who've been, to my knowledge, openly trans in the classroom. So colleges and universities, particularly those that are historically or predominantly white, have been places where people like me have been historically excluded. And I think that many students today are still feeling the repercussions of that history of exclusion in many of the campus environments. And I know that I did several years ago as an undergraduate student. So for me, not only do my identities inform my teaching philosophy, but the visibility of those identities is equally important to me in terms of making the learning environment a little less monolithic, a little less oppressive. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for listening. Feel free to follow me on YouTube, where I talk about more Black, queer, and trans things, and where I will be launching, as soon as I get around to it, my cooking vlog, Brunch and Booty Shorts, and I am wearing a promotional t-shirt promoting it. It's got to be groovy, all one word, no apostrophe. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.